Michael Jefferson. I'm going to switch him to panelist,
Okay, great.
and that's our quorum. Great.
Thanks, Paige. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is the first public committee meeting of the Ad Hoc Reinvestment Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order and go through attendance. Andrea Comer, Corey Betts, my fellow co-chair Avery Gaddis,
Here.
Sabira Gordon, Michael Jefferson,
Present.
Jalanane present, and Paula Robertson.
Here.
Great. So we've got quorum. So first on the agenda is the sort of broader reinvestment funding planning. So as we've had in previous discussions within the broader council, we need to come up with a plan and strategy around how we want to tackle reinvestment. Currently, we have about $6.1 million that we're looking to spend this year, and then we're looking to make an additional ask for the coming fiscal year as well. But of course, want to make sure that we have a clear plan and strategy in place before we go after that funding. In a lot of conversations during those meetings, as well as just feedback that I've received from fellow council members, there is one potential option, which is putting out a request to have community conversations to better understand where we need to target these reinvestments. We want to make sure, as we're thinking about how we're reinvesting the money, we're hearing from the people within the communities and specifically targeting those initiatives that, one, currently aren't necessarily getting funding through other channels, but two, are critical to those who have been impacted greatest by the war on drugs. So that's one item that I'd like to get feedback from fellow committee members on and see their thoughts on it.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I may, I don't think we should reinvent the wheel. I think there are groups out there, organizations out there who already have that data. I think there are neighborhood organizations across the state that have that data. I think local entities have that data about the needs of the given community. I think we have an understanding of the needs. I don't think we should do it just to do it if it's already been done. People are in need, and I don't think we have to, travel down a road that's already been traveled. It makes no sense to me. Further, I think the Yukon study could give us a clear indication as to what the needs are. So I think we have to streamline this. I don't think we should just do it just to do it, because then we're spending money that could be better spent within our respective communities. I give 100,000 on RFP to some group to get information that we have at our fingertips. That 100,000 can now go back into the community. That's just my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councilman Jefferson. Other members, thoughts and feedbacks on that?
I think there could be a combination. I definitely hear you in terms of the groups that are out there. But I think at some rate, what ends up happening is it becomes a closed party of groups that you're used to. And if we're looking to find people that we haven't touched, there could be some mechanism to reach out and find those groups that are unheard. And I think that's part of it. As far as Yukon say, I think it's a great idea. We've reviewed it. There are some issues around looking at how they parse the information. We're kind of digging a little deeper to make sure that information is accurate and able to engage and utilize. And so, as I said to the Councilman Jefferson's point, I think that we do have some organizations that are out there, but I think there would be some benefit to creating some kind of way to go out and listen and hear kind of what those people that don't fall in those groups, they have an opportunity to have a voice. Thank you.
Other members? So I agree with what Council Member Robertson has just shared. I've taken a look at the Yukon study. There's a couple of pages on, what they've heard that could be relevant from a reinvestment perspective, but I wasn't feeling too strongly that we had a lot to pull from in terms of targeted areas in that study. That said, I don't disagree with Councilman Jefferson that there are organizations already doing this work, and we should do a little bit of a deeper dive into it. But I think I'm not sure I feel confident that we as a council have had the opportunity to hear from community members directly. I think, we've been leveraging a lot of expertise that exists across the state, good folks that are doing this work. So I do think it's important to have a little bit of that balance so that we are doing our due diligence in terms of making sure we're hearing from folks. I'm not saying we need to spend $100,000 on an RFP to do this. I think that it could potentially be a lot more streamlined and simple than that, and significantly less in cost. But I do like the idea of a little bit of a hybrid approach and model. Any other reactions to it? Okay. So if we were to entertain a sort of hybrid approach, my recommendation would be to put out a RFP to get sort of a sense of someone doing the community conversations. I think having 2 to 3 conversations, either hybrid or just virtual, so it's easily accessible to folks across the state in a short amount of time, will help us at least provide those venues. And I think in the same time, we can request SEC staff to come back with us with a list of organizations that are specifically doing the work we're looking to target, and help us understand what are those potential funding opportunities or types of programs that we might be able to fund, to review and then take action on. Kyle Abercrombie, your hand up.
Hi, folks. Sorry, I know I'm not a council member, but I just wanted to chime in here. I think if we're concerned about, making sure most of the money is going back to programs and communities, and we're concerned about time, I don't know that we necessarily need to do an RFP. There could be, if we spend, I think less than $50,000, there's kind of a state preferred contract list that we could use. So I just want to throw that out there. That may have been touched on already, but figured I'd just re-mention it.
That's helpful to know. I'm going to guess this is going to be significantly less than $50,000, so that should fit in. So just thoughts on sort of that approach where we both have the community conversations and request the staff to come back to us for our next committee meeting with a list of sort of programs and initiatives that exist currently in the state that we'd want to potentially review and further invest in. Seeing 2 head nods, I think, in agreement. So great. So I think that's a good direction in terms of parameters for the staff, in terms of the types of programs that they should be looking at. Councilman Jefferson, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know you mentioned there are a lot of existing organizations. Do you have thoughts on the type of initiatives we want to be looking at? Sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we have to be measured in our approach because there's so many groups out there have been impacted by the war on drugs. I mean, you have seniors, people who raise their grandchildren while their sons or daughters were incarcerated. I think we have to certainly look at the elderly. I think we have to look at mentoring programs. I think we have to look at reentry. I think we have to look at those who were directly impacted by the war on drugs. So those would, and I think we have to look at our those in the youngest of our demographics. I mean, I think reading is something that we could never sideline. I mean, I think that's an issue. I think those who are engaged in those kind of programs that are, teaching and reading programs and the like have to be considered. I think it's such a wide range. I think, I think everyone on this call could name at least 4 or 5. Those would be my priorities, though. The elderly mentoring programs, our reentry, and all the issues around reentry, and certainly programs that impact young people, particularly around education, reading.
Other program thoughts? And I just want to take a quick second to acknowledge Council Member Corey Betts has joined the call as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was in a Zoom that took a little longer than I expected, so I apologize.
No worries. Thus is the beauty of snow days.
So, thanks for having me.
So we're currently discussing a twofold approach. One, where we're going to have some community conversations to better understand the needs in terms of where we could be reinvesting the funds we have at hand based on community needs. And then the second is getting a understanding of what programs and support organizations currently exist that are targeting some of the areas where we feel like our the social equity council's investment should be going into. So Councilman Jefferson just mentioned the elderly, youth around education and mentoring, and then reentry being obviously a big one that would be of interest and alignment to this council. I'd also like to add substance abuse programs. I think, make a lot of sense. So adding that to the list as well.
Absolutely. So that's my wheelhouse, substance abuse. So substance abuse, and when we talk about second chance, right? Those individuals who are re-entering, making sure that we're creating opportunity for them as well, so that they don't, go back to jail, right? So what does that look like? And I think with anything, even before they go to jail, just creating opportunity as well. So just thinking around those lines of what type of opportunities are we creating for individuals in these areas. And I think once we are able to focus on those opportunities, I think it'll definitely bring crime rate down, because if they got opportunities, they're not out here doing craziness. So I think that's very important.
Any other additions from other council members?
I have one other comment.
Yep.
So back to the known organizations. I mean, it would be helpful, I think, to share something, somewhat not formatted, but maybe as they are doing their outreach, maybe there is a, I don't know, kind of an agenda we could put together in terms of having them outreach even, or expanding their footprint in terms of the folks that they're dealing with, and just kind of getting some feedback from their tentacles. I'm just thinking in terms of how to expand and truly dig in to where there can be the best help.
Okay. So with both of those scopes in mind, I just want to kind of quickly talk through where I'm seeing the roles and responsibilities of this committee versus the staff, and what I think the process could potentially look like. So I think this committee is responsible for sort of making sure that a third party is selected to run the community conversations, providing the criteria and parameters for investment, providing guidelines for evaluation of proposals once we put out the RFP for investment, and then making investment recommendations to the council. Ultimately, the council is going to be approving, any investments that we recommend, and moving forward from that. I think the responsibility of the staff is to help manage, the third party for the community conversations, to, once we have an RFP out and proposals are coming in, I believe it's the responsibility of staff to review the proposals and evaluate them against the guidelines that have been set by the committee. And this would, of course, we have a position that was approved in the budget, that my understanding is it has not been posted yet, but I know January is working to have that posted as soon as possible so that we have that extra support on staff for the review and process of these proposals. And I think with that in mind, for next steps, the staff will take a look at, I think we need to sort of recommend a budget, and then the staff will take a look at bringing on someone to conduct these community conversations. We'll also ask the staff to review both the UConn study findings, as well as additional organizations and programs in the state around the impact areas that we have discussed today, and come back to us with sort of, here's a proposed list of directions that we can go in terms of funding we have in hand that we're looking to do before the end of the fiscal year. The staff will also help draft the criteria and parameters for investment and bring it back to us based on the conversation we've had today, and just sort of make sure we're in line. They'll draft the guidelines for the evaluation of proposals in partnership with us. And then once we've got all that done, we'll launch the RFP for the investment proposals. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to launch the RFP, by the end of mid to late March. It will require us to probably have 1 or 2 special meetings of this committee just to make sure we've got everything in line. And I'm not feeling that we need to have the community conversations all done by the time we launch, but I do want to make sure that we have some input from those ahead of launch where we can.
I'd also like to add, just kind of being mindful of a timeline, in terms of just kind of, as I said, we have a lift to do, and engaging both the council and the staff. But as I said, to Councilman Jefferson's point, I mean, there is a need, and we'd like to do, with thoughtfulness, to get out as quickly as possible. So wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. So if we are all good with that process, those sort of the steps in the process, January, do you think in over the next, let's say, 2 weeks, you and your team can help bring some of those pieces back, and we'll schedule a special meeting for this group to get together and start sort of finalizing the components that we need to, so we can move a little bit faster on it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And I'll follow up with just kind of the specific pieces that are needed here.
Okay.
Madam Chair, is it necessary for us to place this, take a vote today to move it to the full council for the March 7th meeting, or is it a bit premature to?
I think we could take a vote on the scope and process. If we're in accordance with that, or in agreement with that, I will happily share that with the council. I don't think there's a council vote needed on any of these items, but I do want to make them all aware of the steps and approach and timeline that we're taking, and hopefully I can work offline with January just to kind of hammer out the timeline with the actual dates, and bring that to the next council meeting. I believe next. So the next
I just think it's such a very important part of our mission. I think it's important that we keep all council members abreast of,
absolutely,
the actions of this particular committee.
Absolutely. So with that, do I can I entertain a motion to recommend the process of reviewing existing organizations as well as having community conversations, with the goal of launching an RFP by the end of March?
So moved.
So moved. Second, Corey.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Motion passes. That I think covers what we wanted to discuss today. I'm really hopeful that once we have those documents to review, that's really where we roll up our sleeves, make sure everything is in line, and then once the proposals come in and the floodgates open, I think we'll have a lot of work to do then as a committee. But with that, anything for the good of the order? Excellent. Well, thank you all for your time. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful evening or rest of the day. It's not even
All in
evening.
favor?
All in
Aye.
favor. Sorry, all in favor. I had 3 there anyway. So, all
Aye.
right.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you,
care.
Madam
Take
Take
Chairwoman.
care. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.